Hello, ladies. I had said I would do a video talking about words of knowledge, so here I am. I want to start off by saying how much I appreciate each and every one of you. Each one of you has blessed me and helped me in the past year and a half that I've known you, and I appreciate each one of you. Each one of you brings something different to the table, and each one of those things has helped me, and I'm pretty sure and positive that it has for everybody in the group. So I just want to say that before I get going, but you all mean the world to me, and I just wanted you to know that. So, all right, so for those of you who do not know what words of knowledge is, a word of knowledge is when you get a fact or a detail about a person or a situation that you would not have known in the natural. It is something that God has given you. And I started getting those probably about 15 years ago. I did not know what they were. I was not going to a church that walked in the gifts, but yet God was starting to grow that gift in me. So I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was called. And I knew he was teaching me something, but I just didn't know. I didn't know there was a word for it. I learned later that there is in his words of knowledge. I think sometimes people in other denominations may be walking in it. They just don't know what it's called. I have learned that. The way I started, I'm just going to share a little bit of that with you, is right after my divorce. I was in a very desperate place, and I was going to a church, a Baptist church, who was helping me a lot in that process. And every day on my lunch hour, I would go and be just flat on my face at the altar before the Lord, and I would have my Bible out, and I did that every single day for like a year and a half before I moved to Dallas. And it was during that time when I was really getting to know God, I was really connecting with God, that I was learning to hear his voice. And I had to learn him first. I had to learn his character. I had to learn who God was before I could start really walking in this gift. And so anybody that's going to be doing that, you have to be in connection with God. You have to be in relationship with God, because the only way you can recognize his voice is if you know him. And so I want to start off by saying that you have to be in relationship and you have to be connected with him as you're walking in this. And that's what I did for a year and a half. Well, I mean, I've done it since then, but that's how I started. And anyway, he just grew it from there. But so what I've learned, and also I want to share this, that anything that I've learned about the words of knowledge, I have gotten from the Holy Spirit. From the very beginning, he let me know that he wanted me to learn from him and be in connection with him in the Bible, and that was who was going to teach me. And so I have not gotten teachings or anything from anybody else. I have not read books, and I honestly don't read a lot of books. This is just the way he has been with me. I'm not saying it's bad to read books. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying with me, he has let me know that he wants me to learn straight from him and nobody else, and from the Bible. And so that's what I've done. And so I don't want you to think, though, that I'm saying that reading books is bad. I'm not at all. But that's just how he's done with me. So if anything that I'm sharing with you has been from my personal experience and nothing that I've read or learned from somebody else, this is just from what I have learned and experienced in my walk with God and with the Holy Spirit. So one of the things I have learned is not to put God in a box, Yeah. He can do anything and he will do anything. He can speak in any way and he will speak in any way. And what I've also learned is he's a very individual. He connects with us very individually. And so and he loves to interact with us. And so he is probably going to speak to you in a way that you enjoy. Um, so for me, I love problem solving. I love puzzles. So that's how he speaks to me. He gives me kind of these, it's kind of like he gives me little crumbs and I have to put them together and kind of figure it out. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And he knows that. So that's how he gives it to me. But for somebody else, he may speak to them through nature. I'm not a nature kind of girl, so he doesn't. I mean, he does sometimes, but that's not his main way of speaking to me because it's not my thing. But for somebody else, that is probably how he would speak to them. And so I would just say to be very open to the different ways that God can speak. I feel like he is speaking to us all the time. We just miss it because we are looking for it maybe in a certain way and it doesn't fit the way we are expecting or looking for it, and so we miss it. But if we are just keep our minds open to our world around us, we will probably see that he is speaking to us a lot more than we thought. One thing I've learned too is if I see say a certain number or a certain anything, honestly, that seems to be repeating itself everywhere I look, or more than it should be for the given circumstances or situation, to pay attention to that. It's probably him trying to say something. Pay attention to that. Like when I lived in Dallas and I was in traffic for an hour going to work and an hour coming back every day. I know this sounds crazy, but he used to speak to me through license plates. If I saw a certain combination of numbers and I kept seeing it and kept seeing it, and it was a lot more than statistically it should be, I started paying attention to that number. And I'm like, okay, God, what are you trying to say? And sometimes it's a scripture, and I'll look it up, and he's trying to tell me something. If there's not a person around me, it's usually something like that. But if there is somebody close by, and I start doing that, it could be something for them. So I've just kind of learned to kind of read the situation as to what it might be. So also, let me back up. Okay, so when he gives me something, this is something else I've learned. A lot of times it is a quick thought that flashes in my head and can flash right back out. If I'm not paying attention, I can dismiss it. But I have learned just through experience, like, especially if it's a thought that, like, I ask myself, why would I think that in this situation or this circumstance? It doesn't make sense. Like, I have no idea why I just thought about that. And it was so fast. I've learned to pay attention. And if there is somebody around me, it may be connected with them. And so that is something I've learned too, not to ignore those really quick thoughts that just can go in and out. I've also learned that whenever I get a word of knowledge for somebody, this is just my experience. Again, this is just my experience with the Holy Spirit. It is because they have a heart need. I don't, and that word of knowledge, like he did Jesus did at the well with the woman, whenever he came up in John 4 to the woman at the well, and he told her to go get her husband, and she said she didn't have a husband. He said, that's right, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you're living with now is not your husband. It was his way of saying, I see you. I know you personally. Only God would have known these things. I wouldn't. There's no way for me. It gets their attention. But it also, for me, has led into conversations to get to that heart need. For me, I have learned that the word of knowledge is not the main focus. It's just not. It is something to be used to help that person, to encourage that person. But the main goal is for them to feel the love of God. Period. That's it. At least for me, that's how he uses mine. I can't speak for everybody else, but that is for me. If I focus on the word of knowledge, then I feel like I've really missed the mark, because the focus is on the gift and not the gift giver. It is not on the right thing. It is not on Jesus. It is not on God. And that is the main thing. If I get a word of knowledge wrong, and you will, it happens, we're human, we don't always get it right. If I have my focus on that person's heart need, it really doesn't matter. God still moves in that situation. If my heart is right and I'm doing it, I feel like I'm being obedient to him, I'm doing it out of love, I'm trying to get to their heart need for the love of God, for them to feel known by God, to be loved by God. If I'm doing all of that, he is going to move through it, and it really does not matter if it's right or wrong. He will still move in the conversation. Some people, whenever they don't get it right, drop it from there because that was their main focus, instead of it being sort of like just a part of the conversation, but the heart of the conversation is still there. They drop the conversation, but they could have kept going. If I get one that's wrong, what I say is, okay, I'm not sure why I got that, because I really am not sure why I got that if I've got it wrong. But anyway, I just say, but for whatever reason, I feel like God has highlighted you to me because he wants you to know that he sees you and he's with you, etc. At that point, they feel known and seen and loved by God regardless, and they really don't care about that word of knowledge being wrong. Because again, we got to the heart need. And then they start opening it up about all kind of stuff. And that is truly what the encounter is all about. So I guess what I'm trying to say is not to put too much focus on it, because the main thing is to love that person, to show them the love of God. And you can, whatever way you can do that, then that is the goal. So on how I actually get words of knowledge. So if I haven't done it in a while, I kind of start with the basics, and this is just kind of how I flow and work. So say I'm going into Walmart. He loves to use Walmart with me, or the gas station. That's another, or the grocery store. Those are common places he loves to give me things for. So, if I'm kind of feeling him moving, I'll just ask him, okay, who am I supposed to look for? I'll just ask for a color. The first color that pops in my head, okay, I'm going to look. All right, say it's purple. Okay, I'm going to look for somebody in a purple shirt. That's it. Nothing more than that. If I'm kind of rusty, I haven't been flowing in it, and that's what I do. I start with the basics. I'll say, okay, I'll look for a purple shirt. And then I'll kind of walk around Walmart, kind of scanning people for purple shirts. There may be 2 or 3. And out of the 2 or 3, I'm like, okay, does one, are any of these feeling, am I drawn to them? I guess that's a good way to say it. Do I feel drawn to that person? If I do, then I will go up to them and I'll just say, I know this may sound weird because it does to a lot of people. I know this may sound weird, but whenever I came in here, I felt like God told me to look for a purple person in a purple shirt. And here you are. And usually whenever he gives me things for people, it's because they're going through something and they're having they're going through a hard time, and he wants them to know that he's in it with them. He loves them. He sees the details of their life, and he has not left them. At that point, then they will share. Usually somebody's going through something, so they'll share whatever it is. We're getting to that heart need, and then, because they have been felt seen by God, they'll open up, and then most of the time they'll be open to prayer. Once in a while they won't, and that's okay. That's okay. But it can be something simple as that. I've seen some of my most powerful encounters have been something majorly simple, but if God is on it and he moves through it, it can become huge. So never minimize a word of knowledge. Never minimize the situation and think, oh, but it's not like a birthday or something. No. If God's on it, he can make it a very powerful encounter. He will move on it. If he's in it, even the simplest of things, he can make into a powerful encounter. So that's what I'll do. And then and so I'll get more comfortable with that. So I'll start with basics. A lot of people want to go straight for the harder stuff, I guess you could say like a birthday or whatever. I try to build my confidence in what I'm doing and start basic and small and grow from there as I get more confident. So I say start off with the color of a shirt, and then as I'm getting more comfortable in that, then I start paying attention to those, like I said, those quick fleeting thoughts, really quick. If he gives me a number and a person, and I feel like it's for a person, usually, not always, usually it's a month or a date of some sort. If I'm trying, sometimes I'll say, he loves to give me a month. Say, August pops in my head real quick, goes back out. So I'll say, does August mean anything to you? I do not assume anything. I am still learning. I don't assume it's a birthday or an anniversary or whatever. I'll ask them, does this mean anything to you? And this is where I am still learning. I'll say, does this mean anything to you? Yes, it does. And then, of course, you would think, because it's a broad month and not a specific day of the month, but they still, it really, oh yeah, it does. And it's usually something, and it's not always one of those things, and I've learned that, but it's something important to them. It could be, say, when they lost someone. It could be when they were supposed to have had a baby. It could be, it could be so many different things. I've learned not to assume, and they let me know what it is, and then I'll say, oh, okay, well, okay, that makes sense, because, usually God gives me things, and, I do my little spiel. And so, and then they're really open to God at that point, because most of the time they've been struggling because of whatever it is. I've just noticed that with me, and I've gone through a lot in my life, a whole lot, and I feel like because of the different things that I've been through, I can understand a lot of people in a lot of different situations that are painful. He is using that for the good. And so most of the time when I have encounters, it's people with some sort of painful situation, and they are needing to hear from God. And so he doesn't work with words of knowledge always that way, but that is how he works in mine. That is sort of my thing. That is just how he is using me. He may use you in a different way, based on whatever your life experience is, whatever your whatever your giftings are and whatever he wants to use you in, it may look different. But I'm just sharing with you what I've learned on how to get words of knowledge and how he has used it with me. I have heard a few things, and I'm just sharing with you what I have learned through personal experience. So if I get a month, I share the month. Once I get comfortable with asking about months, then I try to get more specific and ask about a certain day of the month and start trying to narrow it in. I start broad, and as I get more comfortable, I start narrowing in the details. So I start, to me, it just works better for me to do it that way because my confidence in it, I just get more confident if I do it that way. If I start out big and it's always wrong, well, then I'll lose confidence. Like I never hear from God, oh, what am I doing? I can't do this. And so, but if I start broad and learn, it's sort of like a baby. They're not going to start off running, they start off with crawling, then walking. And what happens when they learn to walk? They fall. We as parents, whenever our babies fall, we don't say, oh my gosh, you're never going to get this right. No, no. We applaud them. We cheer them on. And God does the same way. We may not get it all right, and we won't get it all right. But he is going to encourage us to keep going, not to quit just because we didn't get it right or we fell down or whatever. He's going to applaud us. Get back up and let's try this again. Yay, you did it. And that's another thing. Okay, that's another thing. Whenever I would get something right, I would celebrate. I don't care how little it was. I was celebrating it because to me, it's a big thing, I didn't focus on, and I don't focus on when I get things wrong. Let it go, let it roll, and keep moving. I think a lot of times people get hung up on they've got to have it perfect. They've got to get it right, or they're going to misrepresent God, and they give up and quit too soon. It's a learning process. Give yourself grace. Know that if your heart is right and you are obeying the nudge of the Holy Spirit, he's going to move on it. It's going to be kind of hard to mess it up. You're going to have to kind of do something big to mess it up. And so because I am an introvert, let me just say that I am an introvert. I am not an extrovert. I'm not a people person. I'm not. And so it's kind of surprising to me that he gave me this because I'm not really a people person. And so if he can use me and my little faux pas and social awkwardness, then he can use anybody, quite honestly. And honestly, I kind of think that's why he does use me, because I am not the person that would normally do that. I am a little socially awkward. Y'all have met me. And so I am not the social butterfly. I am not. And so, and that's another thing I want to say. He uses all personalities, all kinds of different people from different backgrounds. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Don't be you. And he has been I've been hearing that a lot lately. Be you. He created us. He knows us inside and out. He created us with the personalities that we have for a reason. And he is going to use you in that personality just like you are. And he needs all kind of different personalities to accomplish what he has, planned. And so if we were all the same, that wouldn't happen. So be you. For example, how I pray is not going to look like how somebody else prays. It's just not. I'm not loud. I'm not all those things. I am quiet with it. Somebody else, however, is, more extroverted, and they're going to be louder with it. That is okay. One's not more than the other. It's just two different ways of praying. That's it, And so it's the same. Don't try to be something or that you're not. Be you. And so I think sometimes people feel like because they don't have a certain personality that God's not going to use them. That is so wrong. so wrong. So get that out of your head. He will, and he's going to use you just like you are. Also, back to how I get them. Another thing is, when we don't put God in a box. So, okay, let me just give you an example. All right, so whenever I saw a person, this is one example I had. Whenever I saw a person, I instantly, really quickly saw a flower. And I was like, okay, as you all know, I'm not a gardening person. I'm not a flower person. I didn't know what this flower was. So I had to go to Google and look this little puppy up because I had no idea what it was. And I'm thinking, why did he give me a flower? He's not knows, and I'm not a flower person. So I went to Google, looked it up. It was a black-eyed Susan. Y'all are probably laughing, thinking everybody should know what a black-eyed Susan looked like. However, I did not. So I learned it was a black-eyed Susan. Now, a lot of times people will stop right there and they will come up with something about something prophetic, about flowers, blah, blah, blah. I didn't feel that. And so I started looking at the details of black-eyed Susans. And I learned that they are used in a festival at a certain time of year. I want to say it's a horse race, if I remember right. And it was on a certain date. I'm like, okay, that stands out. All right, so the person that I got this for was the pastor's wife at my church in Dallas. So I just said, okay, going out on a limb here. So I saw a black-eyed Susan. So I wondered if this date, and I gave her the date, not the year, but the month and the day of the month. I said, does this date mean anything to you? Also, because this is a black-eyed Susan, I feel like he's also given me a name. Does the name Susan mean anything to you? Well, lo and behold, it did. She was supposed to speak at a conference. The lady that was running the conference, name was Susan. She was the one who invited her, and it was on that date. And I was like, whoa, there was no way I could have known that. She had not told me. I do not know her personal schedule. I don't know anything like that. And I couldn't have, coordinated those details about a black-eyed Susan and that date. I mean, that was such a God thing. Such a God thing. And so I have learned just through experiences like that if I ask him, what are you trying to give me? Not assume, okay, this is a flower, I'm going to make it up to this prophetic thing. Ask him, what are you trying to tell me? Am I supposed to give a prophetic word from this flower, or is there something more? I have learned not to assume. Ask him, and he'll tell me, And I just felt like I just didn't feel like it was a prophetic thing. I felt like it was a date and a name, and it was. So he can speak to us in all kind of creative ways. I'm just saying, don't put him in the box. And also, another thing I've learned, timelines. So, whenever I am doing this walk with him, and say I get a month or a date or whatever, and for somebody in Walmart, and I go up to them and I ask them, and they tell me that they lost a baby that was due then. Okay, I've learned, okay, well, and you pray for that situation. Then when I go to another situation, and that he reminds me of that encounter, and I'm like, why did he just remind me of that? There was no reason around that I should have thought about that. So then he leads me to a person, and I learned that they too have lost a baby. And so then it started making sense. Okay, he uses my previous experiences, my previous timeline, to speak to me about other situations. The only way I can get a timeline with him with these encounters is by stepping out. He's not going to be able to do that in the beginning because I don't have a timeline yet. Excuse me. But as I grow and keep doing these things, I am creating a timeline. And he will remind me, using these situations and these encounters, about future or these other encounters. And that is how he's speaking to me about a situation. Because, I'm not always supposed to ask them, even, okay, so let's just say that, because that has happened, and it was about a loss of a baby. I went to Walmart. That came to mind. I was like, why did I think about that? And then he led me to a couple that was digging through DVDs, and I just asked them about that date, and they told me that's what it was. In future encounters, I've kind of experienced the same thing, but I'm not going to say, hey, did you lose a baby during that month? There's some things you may know going in, you don't say. You just don't. Yeah. So there's that. Some things you're not supposed to share and say. You may know, and it helps you with the encounter. It helps you know, and hey, they dealt with a loss, and how to interact with them, how to engage with them, because they're grieving. And so it's helpful, but you're not supposed to share everything. And so that you just need to be in constant communication with God as to, okay, what does this mean? What are you trying to tell me? But also, am I supposed to share it? You're not, sometimes you're not supposed to. So there is that too. What else? So dreams. He's also spoken to me in dreams with details. A lot of people interpret dreams as symbolic, etc., etc. He's given me dreams that were kind of literal. Not in that they were fixing to happen. I've had those too. But, for example, I had a dream about two guys that I've known, but I couldn't figure out why I was dreaming about them. But they had the same name in the dream. Well, in real life. But they were both in the dream. And so when I thought about it in the morning, when I woke up, I'm like, why did I have that dream, God? What was I supposed to get from it? A lot of times, say it's a more of a symbolic message. No, I asked him, and I've learned to do this, not assume. I asked him, what am I supposed to get from this? And he honed in on the two names. And I'm like, okay. I'll store that. I'll keep that in mind. So just say it was Steve. I don't remember what the name is, honestly, at this point, because of years ago. But anyway, let's just say it was Steve. All right, the next day, I go to the gas station. And that name pops in my head. That dream popped back in my head. I'm like, okay, so I feel like Steve is somewhere around here. So on the other side of the pump, I said, do you happen to know anybody named, I didn't assume but he was Steve. Do you happen to know anybody named Steve? Yeah, I'm Steve. Okay. All right. So then, I go through my whole thing with him. And then I said, do you happen to know anybody else named Steve? Well, yeah, actually, my boss. We were just having this blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense why there was two Steves in my dream, because the encounter involved two Steves. So sometimes he's giving me things in dreams, names in dreams. I've just learned to not him, put him in a box. Be open and always ask, what are you trying to tell me? And not assume anything. That's one of probably the biggest things I've learned is don't assume that you know the meaning. And that's another thing. If you don't know the meaning, shelve it. Don't discard it. Shelve it. I have had things that he gave me, and I know he gave it to me. I mean, just know it. But I didn't know why or what it meant. I just knew it was from him, and that's all I knew. I shelved it. 5 years later, 3 years later, whatever, suddenly it all comes into play. And I'm like, oh, now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. But had I not shelved it and just discarded it, I would have missed the when he did actually reveal it. You know what I mean? I would have totally, anyway. So, if you're not sure about something, write it down. Don't discard it. Save it. It will come back up. It'll unfold. And that's also what I've learned. Probably the biggest things I've learned is not to assume anything and always ask questions to God. There are times when I thought I knew what something meant because Terry is putting her little thing to it instead of asking God like I have learned. This is how I've learned it, is because I have assumed things before and then it wasn't right. And then when he showed me what it was, I'm like, oh, I would have never gotten that. Whenever he shows me, it is usually so not something I would have thought of. I know it's God. I just know. I mean, it's just all over. It's God. It's God. And it just is. I mean, so that's why I have learned not to assume anything. Ask him questions. So, I guess, the biggest takeaways for me is to be in relationship with him, because, you have to know his character. You have to know who he is. He is not going to tell you something that is contrary to the word. He is not going to do it. And you got to know what the word says. You just do. Otherwise, you don't know if it's contrary to the word. You know, if you're out there in an encounter, you're not going to really have a lot of time to look in the Bible. Is this in the Bible? You just got to know it. You got to know the Bible, know God's character to know if he would be saying something like this. You just got to be in relationship with him and to know if he would. And you can't start out in a relationship, start learning the words of knowledge, and then just slack off on the relationship with him and, still be doing the words of knowledge. No, just no. You've got to be in a continuous relationship with him. Also, and so I'm just kind of sum up what my biggest things are. Don't assume that you know what something means. Ask him what it means. 9 times out of 10, it's not what I think it means. Now, y'all may be better at that than me. Most of the time, when he shows me something, I'm like, oh, okay. And I know it's him. If I don't know what it means, then I'm going to let it sit until I do. It can sit years. I've had several things sit for years and then crop up and you're like, whoa, wow, that was such a God thing. That was so God. Wow. Okay. So every word that you get, write it down if it doesn't come to pass. Or, it doesn't make sense in the situation. Just write it down. Also, a lot of people have fears about trying to step out in this. Because like I said, they're going to misrepresent God. Or cast him in a bad light because they didn't get it right or whatever. I have learned through doing this when a word feels like it's him and when it doesn't. The only way I can learn that is through experience. That is not something I can teach you. It is not something anybody else can teach you. The only way you learn certain things is by experiencing them. The only way you're going to learn how a word of knowledge, a correct word of knowledge feels, because it does feel different, is by doing it. You can learn just as much in the wrong ones as you do the right ones, just like with every other part of life. Don't be afraid, like I said, of getting it wrong, because he can still use it if your heart is right and you feel like you're obeying him and you are trying to, share him. He will move on it. He will. So try to get over that fear that you're going to misrepresent him. Also, there's other fears that people have. Fear is probably the number one thing at keeping people in doing their calling and what they're supposed to be doing for God. If it is, for me, it was approaching people. Goodness grannies. I'm an introvert. Going up to somebody in Walmart was, about gave me a panic attack when I first started. And so if that's where you are, don't focus on this just yet. Just focus on approaching people and just saying, hey, how are you doing? Are you having a nice day? Trying to open up a conversation with somebody. And if you can just say hello to somebody and you normally can't, you celebrate it. You celebrate it. And another thing, don't compare. Comparison is a killer. Don't go there. Most of the time what you're comparing is, I say I've been walking in this for years. Do not compare yourself to me. If you had seen me years back when I was green as all get out, I was awful. I could hardly approach anybody, and it just was. But you have to get over that, but don't compare. Do not compare. Comparison is a killer. Don't compare your beginning to my middle. Just don't. And, and also don't compare your personality to somebody else's. Just don't. I don't know how to say it. Just don't do it. It's a killer. It will deflate you and discourage you terribly. Don't do it. God uses every person's situation differently. He uses every personality differently. An introvert can relate and reach people that extroverts can't. Extroverts can relate and reach people that introverts can't. There are strengths with all personality types. There are reasons why he gave us all different personality types. And so if you're trying to be something you're not, you're going to miss the people that he is calling you to, because they need your personality. They need you. So I just have a lot of takeaways, actually. The biggest thing is keep love as the focus and center. God and love. If you don't, you totally miss everything. Everything. Keep the focus on love. And I probably rambled a lot, but I just wanted to kind of share some of it with you. And I probably need to make lists, make it a little more organized. But I wanted to at least get something out to you, and then I can work on making it better, whatever, where it's more organized and not so rambly. But I did want to just go ahead, because I've said I would get this out to you. If you want to learn more, if you want to walk in this more, if you have more questions, get with me and we'll figure out what is a good time and day of the week and whatever to do that, and we can meet up or whatever. If this answers the questions you want to know, that's great. I hope it does. I hope it blesses everyone. It, you know, everyone has different giftings. You may be called to walk and flow in something else. That's great. We need all the gifts. But those of you who do want and feel like he wants to use you in this way, feel free to reach out to me, and we'll try to connect. And I can answer more questions. We can learn this process together, even because I'm still growing, and I hope to grow until the day I die. That is one thing I want to do, is I want to continually learn and get closer to him. And I never want to quit learning. And so I'm still on my journey. I'm still learning. I'm still, in the process too. So, but anyway, just let me know. I hope this blessed y'all. And again, I love you guys. You have blessed me more than you know. And I am really looking forward to the study that we're starting. Was it kind of 2 weeks? I think it's 2 weeks. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that. We've been apart for the summer. We've been working on individual little things, and now we're kind of priming up to get back together, and I'm looking forward to it and seeing what God's going to do in this next year. All right. Well, again, get with me. Love you, and have a good day. All right. Bye-bye.